Big 12 media days are here, and that can only mean one thing. We are inching closer to Texas Tech football kickoff. And if you were excited about Texas Tech football this season, all I want you to do is simply like the video. That is it. We're going to be giving you daily updates on Texas Tech football leading up to kickoff up in Laramie, Wyoming for year number 2 of Joey McGuire. So again, if you are excited about Texas Tech football in their 2023 campaign, just simply like the video. All right, let's jump into this as, again, Big 12 media days are here. And that just means football is inching ever so closely, and it's just around the corner. And Joey McGuire, as well as 5 Texas Tech football players, were in Arlington for Big 12 media days. Those football players include Shough, Bradley, Brooks, Hutchings, and Bradford to go along with the head man himself, and Joey McGuire, who I might add had a ton of drip when it came to the inseam of his suit. My goodness, had the Pirates for Mike Lee, to shout out to him, and obviously his Texas Tech ties did the Pirate have, obviously. But let's jump in to Joey McGuire, and he had 2 pressers kind of in a way. He was on ESPNU talking to the TV staff, and then he was also had a press conference that was conducted by local and regional media out there in Arlington. A few things that stood out to me when it came down to it. And again, kind of paraphrasing here in terms of his quotes and bunching them together, but really the thing was this. He was asked about year 1 and the success that they had and if that's what he wanted. And he was emphatic when he said, our goal is to win the Big 12, and we didn't do that. We did have a pat on the back type moment and stand up to do that as a coaching staff. But after that, he told him to sit down and say the goal isn't done yet. See, the big thing that he talked about too in the TV interview was it felt like they were asking about the 4th downs a lot, and obviously they should, but he was also adamant about how veteran-laden this team is. Mentioned that 18 starters are coming back from the Texas Bowl last season for Texas Tech out of 22 possible. That's one of the highest percentages in the Big 12 when you think about returnees, right? He mentioned Texas Tech has this magic number that they've used for 4th downs, I should say, during spring, and they also had it last year. But they also mentioned that they've met with an analytic team on Thursdays throughout the offseason to see, hey, what can we do to improve this, right? What can we do to use the numbers to improve our performance on the field and off of it as well? So you love to see the progressive thinking when it comes to Joey McGuire and crew. And he mentioned that, hey, this came from his time at Baylor and Dave Aranda and Matt Rule and everything like that. So wanted to give them a shout out too. Also talked about Texas Tech having the 9th best red zone defense in the country last season, a true bend, don't break type defense for Tim DeRuyter and crew. And he said that was going to be a pivotal part for them this year as well. Mentioned that they have to have belief on both sides of the football when it came down to going for it on 4th down and that magic number, because let's face it, it's not just an offensive decision. That's a defensive decision as well, because you can put your defense in a really bad spot if you don't convert on 4th down. One of the biggest takeaways, too, was on the offensive side is that he talked about the offensive line multiple times, really. And the guy that he kept bringing up, and we'll talk about him a little later as well, was Cole Spencer. He said, we're going to be a lot better on the offensive line. Our best offensive lineman, Cole Spencer, missed last season due to a back injury and had a medical red shirt. He will play this year at left guard for the Red Raiders. Also mentioned Rusty Stats as well. That was the biggest takeaway on offense. Now on defense, one of the quotes from McGuire that was really interesting to me was he thinks that this defensive end room, edge rusher, outside linebacker room for Texas Tech is actually better this year without Tyree Wilson. Now he did qualify that by saying, obviously, I'm going to take Tyree Wilson if we can get him, right? But what he went on to say to make sure that everybody understood it is this room is much deeper than last year and has impactful depth. He mentioned 6 guys that will play meaningful snaps for the Red Raiders, whether that's a defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, whatever it is. He mentioned Miles Cole, Joseph Adedire, Isaac Smith, Bryce Ramirez, Steve Linton, as well as a couple of others, right? That was interesting to hear because for me, I think the edge rushers in the defensive end room for Texas Tech is arguably the most interesting for the Red Raiders this season. Obviously, the offensive line is a big deal for Texas Tech, But I think when you look at it, I think that there's a multitude of ways you can go in terms of what is the most interesting position group. I think you could go secondary if you wanted to. And he talked about how they got a couple guys from the transfer portal and how they used the transfer portal to fill in gaps potentially in the recruiting process in terms of getting a little bit more veteran guys out there because they don't want to put freshmen in bad situations, right? So you get a couple of guys out there, obviously from Fresno State, Baylor as well. So that's going to be impactful depth for the Red Raiders secondary. But I thought it was interesting how he brought up the defensive end, edge rushers, outside linebackers, and said, hey, this group is deeper than the team that we had last year, and better than we had last year. Obviously, they would take Tyree Wilson, top 10 NFL draft pick. But I thought it was interesting how many names he said will play for Texas Tech. And I think that that's most interesting because think about the last time Texas Tech had 6 impactful guys that they felt comfortable going off of the edge to get to the quarterback. I'll wait because you're going to be sitting here a long time thinking about it if you ever come up with an answer, right? So that's something to think about as well. Got to ask you one more time, if you haven't already, if you were excited about Texas Tech football, simply like the video. That's all I'm asking for. Nothing else. That's it. Just simply like the video if you were excited for Texas Tech football. All right, let's get out of here with the 3 biggest takeaways for me when it came to what Joey McGuire and then Tyler Shough had to say, who, by the way, Joey McGuire also mentioned this numerous times on the TV in terms of the ESPNU interview and then during the media session. This is the first time Tyler Shough will have the same offensive coordinator in back-to-back seasons in his 6-year college career, right? Tyler Shough is one of the smartest players, if not the smartest football player on that Texas Tech roster. And the freedom that Zach Kittley gives him, you could see an elevated rise in play if Tyler Shough stays on the field. Now, Joey McGuire did say, and so did Tyler Shough, hey, I'm focused on trying to stay healthy this year. I got to make some smarter decisions. But if Tyler Shough is healthy, don't get it twisted. This man has a chance to be a 2nd or 3rd round NFL draft pick. He's that kind of talent. He's got the arm strength. He's got the intangibles in terms of the measurables as well. The smarts, the arm strength, everything you need to be a really solid NFL prospect. Tyler Shough has it. He just has to stay healthy. Joey McGuire and Tyler Shough brought that up. But again, 8-0 in games that he started and finished for the Red Raiders, technically an 8-1 record overall as a Texas Tech starter. But hey, he's one of those big pieces. And also Joey McGuire mentioned about his QB room and told anybody, hey, they can, correct me if I'm wrong, but Texas Tech is the only, or maybe 1 or 2 schools in the Big 12 that has 2 QBs on their roster right now currently that have won games in the Big 12. So that's a big deal. But the 3 takeaways for me, 18 starters returning from the Texas Bowl. That's huge for Texas Tech. Just talked about Tyler Shough and how Joey McGuire is really high on him. It's the first time Tyler Shough has had the same OC in back-to-back seasons. Again, I think he could put up his career stats, which is just under 4,000 yards this season alone. And then we talked about the D-end, edge, outside linebacker room, whatever you want to say, in terms of Texas Tech has a deeper room. And Joey McGuire even ventured to say potentially a better room this season than they did last year where they had a top 10 NFL draft pick. Now, again, don't take that out of context. He did say, hey, obviously I'd want Tyree Wilson back, but from a depth perspective, in an impact depth going down 5 or 6 spots, they have more depth in terms of guys they trust in that room. Also really cool, last question that he had there was about West Texas recruiting. And he went on to say this: you can't allow a Power 5 football player that knows Texas Tech football in West Texas to go somewhere else. We recruit West Texas as its own state. It's important that guys dreaming of playing in the red and black have a chance to do that. Pretty cool to see. He even mentioned that each guy on staff has a part of West Texas that they are in charge of in terms of the recruiting trail out there and their own individual quote-unquote state of West Texas. So I really thought that was cool. Again, I asked this probably a couple times throughout the offseason, but a day like this where you see Joey McGuire speak and everything like that, it's hard not to ask it again, so I'll ask it one more time. Give me one word to describe Joey McGuire as the Texas Tech head football coach. It's hard not to say electric, but I want to hear you guys' opinion on that. And then one more time, if you were excited about Texas Tech football, all I ask you to do is simply like the video. I am RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And if you want the latest Texas Tech football news, rumors, and everything in between, including recruiting, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.